Hello and welcome to The Razor's Edge. I'm Hutch and this interview is with Ali Lisle, vocalist with northeast metalers Trendkill, whose latest single Obsession dropped last week. In the interview we talk about tribute bands, the band's influences, future plans and the hopeful return to Trillians bar in Newcastle in July. Welcome to The Razor's Edge. Nice to see you.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all. Great to speak to you, and nice to spend a little bit of time with someone who's fairly fresh to the scene in comparison with a lot of people. So this is
yeah, definitely for sure.
Yeah. So obviously, for those that don't know you, you're relatively new to Trendkill.
That's right, mate. Yeah, I think it was May last year, actually. So it's been about a year ago joined, but obviously with COVID and everything going on, we've sort of everything's been behind the scenes, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a time to join a band right in the middle of a pandemic when you can do absolutely all about it.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So had you actually agreed to join the band before lockdown, or were you...
I think from what memory serves, Corey, our drummer, dropped me a message because I was in well, I still am. I'm in a Pantera tribute band, weirdly called Northern Trendkill. So we were called that even before I met Trendkill. Weirdly, But he dropped me a message and he just said that he'd seen some of our performances live, and he said, "Would you be interested in joining?"
Yeah,
and they sort of sent us a few of their tunes, and I had a listen, and I was like, these guys have got like a really good ear for songwriting, and the riffs were great, the drums were great, Isaac's bass stuff was fantastic as well, and I just thought, like, really, really cool. So we just they said, can you write some lyrics or whatever and record it or whatever. So with our first single, Struck from Existence, that we released not too long ago. I just sort of did a little recording of that at home and sent it across to them, and they were happy with it, and then we've kind of just moved from there. So we actually released that without I think we hadn't even met up by that point.
Right.
Quite a strange scenario, but since then we've got our own practice room and stuff. I mean, after once COVID allowed for it anyway. That's sort of how things came about, a little bit unconventional, but definitely happy that it happened.
Brilliant. Yeah. So obviously your background is, if you're in a Pantera tribute band, then Pantera are a fairly big part of your influences.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I only really sort of got into doing tribute bands in the sort of last couple of years, because I'm in a Slayer tribute band called Live Undead. Yeah. As well. And that was the first tribute band I joined, and
so you were saying about you were in a Slayer tribute band, yeah? Or you are in a Slayer?
That's right, mate. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So I joined that maybe, I think it was about 2-3 years ago now, and like I say, I hadn't really done lead vocals for anything. I'd always been like a backing vocalist, and it was sort of one of those things where I got asked to do it. I thought, I could probably do that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was in an actual practice room sort of scenario where I sort of realized I had a bit more of a range than I thought. And then maybe it's like half a year later, I got asked to join this Pantera tribute band.
Yeah.
And then I sort of discovered this other kind of side to my vocals as well. Mm-hmm. And then I really got into doing vocals off the back of those two bands. And then as a consequence of that, then sort of Trendkill sort of came along and asked us to do it, and it's just sort of, for the style of music that those guys were writing, it sort of worked out tremendous, really. Like, it was just exactly the sort of stuff that I wanted to do, and it's just sort of gelled really well.
Yeah, cool. So you're obviously, if you're in a Slayer tribute band, you play an instrument as well, yeah?
That's right, yeah. So I play a bass in that one. Yeah. I do have another originals band I'm in called Artura. I sort of do lead guitar and vocals for that. But that's sort of been, it's been one of those bands that's sort of always been bubbling away, but it never quite gets going, kind of thing. But But the guys in Trendkill have been, really, really driven. They've really wanted to sort of get things done. They've pumped out loads of songs. I mean, they sent me a Dropbox folder of all of these great songs they've written. And I was just thinking, like, how easy is that for me? I just get to come in and I just get to do vocals for all this stuff. All the hard work's done. It's great.
Sounds like a dream job.
Ideal. I can't. Well, they do all the hard work. I just have to, do a little bit of shouting and singing here.
I say job. That would imply there was money changing hands, but that's
right. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's true. There's definitely not much of that happening in the minute. Yeah.
So let's talk about Obsession, because of course that was the single that was released last week, and I did the review on the Razors, and what a cracking single! Brilliant, great work.
Thanks.
It's been out for a week now, obviously, or give or take a week now. How's the reception been?
Yeah, fantastic. Like really, really good. I mean, we went to a studio in North Allerton, Ritual Studios, working with a gentleman called Sam. Fantastic producer. You go to recording studios sometimes, and even if you've got a great sound engineer, they don't necessarily always pitch in with sort of ideas, suggestions like, is this going to work? Is that going to work? Things like that. And, when we went into the studio with the sort of, I guess, the rough version of this song, he really liked the energy, liked sort of how many different parts there were to it. Because it's a bit, in terms of like structure, it's all over the shop sort of thing. 1 minute it's a ballad, the next minute it's like got some deathcore breakdown in it. You know what I mean? So, but Sam definitely really helped sort of keep the energy consistent, but sort of bring it all together. So he was a big part of that as well. But the reception since is been really good and positive, and picked up, I guess, on the fact that it's not just sort of one, I guess, genre all the way through. There's elements of lots of subgenres of metal, if you like. And it's good that that's been the positive reception, because that's sort of what we've gone for. We don't sort of want to necessarily limit ourselves to, just a couple of genres if we can help it. So we're really, really thrilled with the reception. We hope that it's just going to get better the more songs we release, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously it's a powerful subject matter in terms of addiction. We're not talking dragons or Ronnie James.
No, not this time anyway.
But you've included social media in the list of addictions, which is really interesting, because that's for someone who's as old as me, which is quite old, obviously social media is still quite difficult to deal with. But for a lot of people, maybe your age or younger even, social media and the various kind of interactions is really quite dangerous, isn't it?
Well, I think so. I mean, look, there's definitely positives to social media. I mean, we're literally benefiting from it now, But I also think that there's an element of social media where people, you see a lot of people and they post, there's some people can post like 10, 11, 12, 20 times a day, and the life's on display. And if you get into that mindset where you're obsessively trying to show who you are through the guise of social media, I worry that that's maybe a bit of an unhealthy obsession at times, because if you compare yourselves to people who are posting this amazing life that they've got and all this and that, well, it doesn't actually mean that that's the case. And if you pay too much attention to that and you obsess over it, then that could lead you down a path you don't want to go down. And I notice, particularly with young people, I've got a younger sister who's 17, and I know social media is very a massive focus amongst her age group, I suppose, and mine, to be fair. I mean, I'm 26, and it's still very much the case for a lot of people I know. So that's sort of why I sort of drew a little bit of influence from that, because as humans, we want immediate gratification for a lot of things. So that's why I thought that, as well as alcohol, drugs, sex.
Yeah, sure. And in terms of the obviously you write the lyrics, but I'm assuming that the rest of the band are involved in the subject matter and you discuss it so that everyone's comfortable with the theories behind the song.
Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, like for all the last two songs, I've pretty much written completely myself. Johnny wrote a fantastic song that we're going to be recording at some point. I'm not 100% sure when, but he wrote a full song with lyrics, and I think the concept was something like the perspective of somebody that's being cremated and looking, and if they could look back on their life as they're going through the flames. And I just thought, like, what a fantastic idea. And like, you know, it's good being able to rely on the other guys as well to come up with like really interesting topics and lyrics. In fairness, again, just makes my job easier. I can be a bit more lazy if I want to.
Sure. So obviously in the last few months, you've obviously released Struck from Existence and now Obsession. Are we edging nearer to an album? What's the plan?
We've sort of been discussing this. I mean, we're humming and hawing between an EP or an album.
Yeah.
Part of it's just financial, you know, like you do an EP, it's going to be half the cost of an album.
Yeah.
But then we've probably got enough good material for an album. And I guess it's just working out what the best thing to do is. We probably will be releasing another single at some point this year before we record an EP or an album.
Yeah.
But I guess in a large part of our strategy is making sure we're getting out and gigging, because like every other band at the moment, we're just desperate to be getting out on the road again, you know?
Yeah. Well, that leads me nicely into the next set of questions, which is around the live experience. Because obviously, unless you sneak something in last summer, I assume that you haven't played actually live with the band, have you?
No, never. Well, other than in the practice room, you know? Yeah. So that's something we're desperate for. I believe, don't quote me on it, but I think we're playing the 22nd of July. Our debut gig is at Trillians Rock Bar in Newcastle, which we're very much looking forward to. And then we do have a short tour with a fantastic band called Elrian in November as well. So we're very much looking forward to that. And we've got a couple of festivals next year, I believe, as well. So very much raring to go with that. But you know, and for me, I'm partially excited to see the energy of Corey and Johnny and Isaac live, because all I've seen of them playing live are videos myself, you know, of them playing at Bloodstock, and I'm excited myself to see that as well. So
yeah, I mean the Facebook page obviously is a snapshot of a band as how you represent it, but clearly if you go back through a year or so, or maybe 18 months or so, it's clear that the band are happiest in their live environment, like most metal bands. You know, this is where you want to be,
absolutely.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you talked about the Elrian couple of gigs which you got, and hopefully if they go ahead, which I think is, did you say it was November or later in the year?
I think it's at the beginning of November. I can't remember the exact date, but yeah.
Because you'll be literally across the water, because I'm in South Wales, but you're playing in Bristol in the Griffin.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So yeah, we're lucky to. So if you're not there, I'm not going to be a happy mind.
I'll be there. Don't you worry. As long as it's on, you'll be there. But I mean, bear in mind that it's smaller than my kitchen, so. Well,
they're the best ones, man. They're the best ones.
As long as they let it go, then that's fine. But it'll be like a Silosis Pantera night, because Ace's like all of Elrian are just massive Silosis fans. So it'll be really interested to.
As am I. Hence,
who isn't, to be fair, but
yeah.
But so obviously in terms of the lead into that, you said you got the gig in Trillians in July, and it looks like certainly the way that the sound is coming is that these gigs are going to go ahead at the moment.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Sure. So, and for you, I mean, obviously that first gig is going to be some experience, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's somewhat comforting that the first gig's going to be sort of in my hometown, as opposed to somewhere else. Not that it would have been bad otherwise, but it's just a fantastic venue, Trillians. If you've never been or if you've never heard of it, I can't recommend it enough. If you ever visit in Newcastle, it's absolutely fantastic. Atmosphere is great. It's always packed.
It's quite a long way to come from South Wales to Newcastle.
It is, but I tell you what, it's worth it. It is fantastic. It's a great venue, but very thankful that it's going to be there for my debut, and then it's just going to be nice seeing other places after that.
And what's your feeling about? I mean, this is more of a general question now about how people are going to respond to live music when it finally comes. Are you of the positive opinion that as soon as a live gig is on, thousands of these denim-clad rockers are going to rush in and absorb it, because they never used to before, did they? In a lot of gigs,
I know, like it's funny because in a lot of ways, I mean, obviously it's been a right naff year and a bit for a lot of people, and I'm sort of half conscious that a lot of people will probably have like a lot of anxiety about, I guess, being in public in close proximity to a lot of people again. So part of me thinks a lot of people will be desperate and they'll just be happy to get to a gig. And then I guess some people will probably maybe need a little bit more time to get themselves back to a position where they'd be happy to do that. But look, the way I look at it is that there's going to be enough people going to these places to make it a good night, and if other people need a little bit more time to feel comfortable doing it again, then that's all you can do. You just have to wait, but all it's going to do is improve. Fingers crossed. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm assuming that have you played Trillians yourself before in the other band?
Yeah, quite a few times, but it's like I say, it's just great atmosphere, great sound. Dave Hill, the guy that runs the place, he has a lot. You can tell he respects the people that comes in to Trillians to see the bands, and he makes it a good venue for bands to play as well. I can't rate it enough, really.
Brilliant. In terms of obviously that gig, then obviously there's Bloodstock that's in between. Now, obviously the band played Bloodstock before you part of the band.
Yeah.
Are you a Bloodstock regular? Have you been before?
I've never been to Bloodstock, and it's more because I've been to Download a few times, and I think it's because generally the people that I've gone to Download with maybe aren't quite as into the more, because I guess Bloodstock it's a little bit more metal purist than Download, I suppose you could say.
Yeah.
So generally I've gone with people who are maybe, it's not that they're not as into metal as much, but there may be their music taste might be slightly more expansive. But always wanted to go. I'm definitely going to go there before I go to Download again, because I've done Download a few times. But if I can play there, even better. But that's a different story.
Sure, absolutely. And obviously the band played there, and I think they were on the Jagermeister stage, weren't they, before?
Yeah.
Right. So obviously I think I know quite a few bands that have played there, and the advantage, obviously, if you've played there once, you've got that in. So fingers crossed, guys, that you'll be, they'll know you, and obviously with new music coming out, then that puts you back in the shop window to get in there, which would be great.
Fingers crossed, yeah. But I'm very conscious that a lot of bands have applied this year. A lot of fantastic bands as well. So if we couldn't play this year, all we can do is hope that we keep in their minds, and that we can get there as soon as possible, because I intensely envy the fact that they've all done it and I've not yet. So Bloodstock, get it sorted.
We'll get it sorted. We'll do our best for you, man, and we'll do our best for you. So let's talk a little bit about yourself. Obviously, we've got Slayer and Pantera as bands that were obviously bands that have influenced you. When you started getting into metal, it's a question I always ask, because the entrance door into metal varies depending on age and where you were at the time. What's the entry level for you? How did you get into it?
Well, it's funny because like I wouldn't say I really knew what metal was until I was maybe about 13 or something like that. But in hindsight, I'd listened to a lot of metal before then. I would just call it rock, I suppose. But My mother is she likes Iron Maiden, AC/DC, a little bit of Metallica. So I was sort of always exposed to it, like when I was younger. Anyway, I think probably the first metal song I heard, I think, was Number of the Beast when I was like 6 or something.
Yeah.
So I guess probably quite an early exposure. But I remember being probably about 13, and I was at my mate's house, and I think I was playing Halo on the Xbox with him or something. And I remember he was like, "Oh, I've found this band called Slipknot. They're sick, mate. They're really, really good." And I was like, "All right, okay." And he put it on, and it was I think it was All Hope Is Gone. I think he was playing. And I remember listening to it, and I hadn't really heard like the proper guttural vocals before, really. And I just remember thinking like, "Oh, that's sick. That's really, really cool."
Yeah.
Went home, like bought that album, and then I think after that, I bought like Endgame by Megadeth, and being like, "Wow, this guitar playing's like the best guitar playing I've ever heard in my life." And then that sort of made us want to sort of learn guitar, and off the back of that. And then after that, it was just like my own kind of obsession with all of the, like, I was very into thrash metal when I was younger. So it was like the big four.
Yeah.
But then very much into my sort of more traditional kind of heavy metal as well, like Sabbath and Maiden and bands like that. But then sort of, I guess, sort of mid to late teens, I started getting into like sort of, I guess, more core orientated bands like Trivium, like early Silosis.
Yeah.
But like honestly though, like Silosis, like legit one of my favorite bands. Like I think they're absolutely unbelievable. But so it's been a sort of a journey, so to speak.
Yeah, sure, brilliant. It's really interesting talking to people. It doesn't matter what age they are, where they come in. You know, I'm old enough that I can remember Iron Maiden's second album coming out and buying it. So,
yeah.
But it's still Maiden, it's still Metallica, it's still Sabbath. Those bands that are the traditional bands seem to be the entry level for everyone. It doesn't matter what the age is.
Yeah.
So it's brilliant. So in terms of obviously Newcastle gets a relatively decent turnover of bands coming in live and stuff. You've got the Trillians, and obviously you've got the arena there and a few other places to see bands. Any bands on a wish list that you would have liked to have seen maybe in their heyday or that are no longer together? Is there something that you...
Well, for being in a Pantera tribute band and never seeing them, like obviously that's a big one.
Does that give you... Do you get any shit about that?
Well, I don't get any shit off anybody, but it's just irritating, man. Because because all I can do is watch old videos of live performances.
Yeah.
And like it's just the irritation of, oh, if only I'd known when I was like however old I was in like 2000 or something to go and see them.
Yeah.
I think, but then again, I think how old would I have been in 2000? I would have probably been like 6.
About 8.
So I don't know how many 6-year-olds were going to Pantera concerts. Like I know
not many were coming out alive. That's a certainty.
No, definitely not. I know. I've a few of my mates have got like their dads were like metalheads growing up and stuff. Yeah. So I know my mate Jack, who I grew up with. His dad went to. Oh no, it wasn't Jack. I think it was my old flatmate Brad. His dad Alan, massive Pantera fan. Yeah. And I think he went to the City Hall in Newcastle to see Pantera, and people were like ripping the seats up because they were getting so like pumped up. So that would definitely be a big one. But seeing like Metallica in their heyday or Megadeth, really like any of those sort of big bands, I would have given my left nut to go and see.
I remember Pantera played in Newport in the mid-90s, and as we were queuing to go in, there was a row of ambulances at the back door.
Really? That does not surprise me at all.
Lined up, and you thought, shit, this is going to be intense. And it was, but
I bet. Absolutely.
So, what about stuff that you listen to these days? Obviously, Silosis produced a fairly hot album last year. That must have been on repeat.
Fantastic. Yeah. I mean, do you know what? I think what was Trivium's last album? What the Dead Men Said. Like, fantastic. I know he's sort of Matt Heafy doesn't really have that sort of as raspy a voice these days, but he's sort of, I guess, improving his singing vocals, and he's brought his screams back. But I just thought, like, in terms of the composition, like the songs were all really hooky, but just very Trivium songs, and I really enjoyed that album. But you know, like it's weird at the minute. I found I don't really listen to as much. Like if I'm sitting down and chilling, like I don't really listen to that much metal as much.
Yeah,
like I've got a very varied music taste, shall we say. Like I was probably gonna get shot to shit for this, like, but
it's a safe space here, Ali.
I quite, you know, like a little bit of Earth, Wind and Fire, like shit like that. You know, it's Friday, you finished work, blasting September out your car window. Like what's better than that? Yeah. But you know, my dad used to show me a lot of like David Bowie and, you know, Nirvana and like shit like Depeche Mode and stuff like that. Like honestly, out anything as long as it's good. Like I really don't mind. But that's sort of it's nice, sort of not oversaturating your own music experience by just listening to just the same stuff all over and over again. So it's a bit weird when you're in the flat and you've got like, you know, David Bowie playing 1 minute and then like Cattle Decapitation comes on like the next song. It's a bit like, oh, fuck no.
Yeah, I think this sounds like my living room, to be honest. But yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, if you'd said I listen to thrash, I'd be slightly worried, because you can't, certainly as a vocalist and a singer, you can't listen to one genre.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I think like there's probably little bits of influence that I take from really obscure, like even like maybe pop music, you know. But I think if you just limit yourself to, you know, like you say, one genre, if it's thrash or if it's just, because you do get people that will just listen to one thing, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But I think in terms of drawing influence, I guess the more eclectic your music taste is, the more unique your own sound's going to be from drawing influence, I guess.
Sure. And for Trendkill, if you had to put a label on them, what kind of genre would you put? Because you're semi kind of thrash, but you're not. And there's a groove in there, and I dislike this. You have to have a core, or you have to have this on the.
Yeah, I know. Like, I know it sounds boring, but probably just a metal band, man. Yeah. Like it's because, you know, like Obsession's probably the perfect example of, you know, it starts off a bit of a ballad, then it kind of goes into a core-ish, breakdown-y kind of chorus, almost a bit Gojira vibes, it's like ish as well. And then it's got that kind of almost like a hardcore section after the breakdown, and then it goes back into thrash. So it's sort of all over the shop, but I feel like it gels well enough. So I would just say we're just a metal band, man.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to be. I think avoid the badges if you can.
Yeah, exactly.
The interesting thing about looking at the band as a whole, with the Devil's Island thing that the Razor's Edge published at the beginning of the week, with the with all of your influences, obviously it shows how eclectic your tastes are, because even the 4 albums that you decided to take to the island were ranged from Megadeth to Talking Heads, didn't they?
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, but I don't think but again, like you say, it's not a bad thing, man. Like, it's, you know, you'd be surprised at little influences you pick up, and I think it's good when even like 1 or 2 people in a band are like that. But we're all kind of the same. I don't think there's a purist among us in terms of the music we listen to. And I just think that's just sort of adds to the charm of it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So just as a final couple of questions then, obviously the last year has been, for everyone, no matter what their status, it's been tough. How have you guys managed to get through it? Is there any changes to lifestyle or approach that you've done that has just kept you going, or have you been one of those people that has worked all the way through it? How's it been for you?
I mean, I work for the NHS, so I've been sort of half fortunate that I've been able to work through it, and I guess that's sort of kept me distracted enough. You know, I know for the other lads, there's sort of been periods where they can work and when they can't because of COVID as well. I mean, for me, I can't speak for the other lads, but for myself, it's sort of come in like peaks and troughs, really, man. Like there were times where I was just sort of in the mindset of, you've just got to keep going with it. You know, you can't can't get too bogged down with the negativity of it all. But then I guess, like a lot of other people, there are times where you just think like, God, this shit's real. Like it's really, it does have an impact on so many things, and the things that you took for granted, like little things, like, you know, for example, every time I see my grandparents, first thing I do, give them a hug when I see them, and then I'll sit down in their living room and I'll have a bit crack with them, and that was normal. You would just do that, and to go, well, as long as since the first lockdown, I mean, that was the last time I hugged my grandparents, and that was just something that, you know, that I totally took for granted. And it's just sort of fortunate that hopefully in the next sort of couple of months that'll sort of go back to normal. So yeah, like it's weird. Like mainly for me, I'm just sort of fortunate that I've got an Xbox and I kind of just blast through the games. That's sort of what's kept me going, like Assassin's Creed and fucking Star Wars games and shit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've found dark places I didn't know existed, and I've worked for the NHS as well, and my wife does as well. And
oh right, yeah.
I'm amazed that both of us have worked from home because we're not front line. We've managed to work at home together for 15 months without killing each other, which is astonishing.
That's definitely that's a sign of a good relationship, I think. Definitely.
Yeah, I think we're all right. I mean, she's the one that will walk in the room and Death will be playing, and she'll go, "Oh, that's a nice noise, dear," and sit down and just let it carry on. So, final question for you, Ali. In terms of what's next for Trendkill, obviously we are looking at possibly another single later in the year.
Yeah.
And future plans? Any apart from that?
On the
road, I suppose.
Yeah, so getting on the road. We're planning to do a music video for the next single.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you the title of the next single. It's going to be called "Blinded by Fate."
Yeah.
And we're looking to do a music video for it. We're just sort of, I guess, because we've just released Obsession, we'll probably wait a little bit before we put things in place to sort in. We're kind of trying to just sort of finalize the set for the upcoming gigs and stuff. But maybe towards the end of the year, you could probably expect that to come out.
Yeah.
And then, just the gigs we've got booked in, really. We just sort of want to really focus on trying to capture the energy from the songs we're recording and making sure we're getting that across live, and just sort of making sure that when people come to see, they're not going to forget it, really.
Brilliant. And where, in terms of self-publicity, people can find you on all the normal streaming sites?
Yeah, we're on Facebook, just Trendkill on Facebook, same on YouTube. We're on Spotify. You can catch the first EP that the lads did on Spotify as well. So just general streaming platforms, Facebook, YouTube, all that good stuff. Magic.
Right, as long as things go to plan, I will be buying you a pint in the Griffin in November. So
fantastic, mate. I'm looking forward to it.
I'd love to come to Trillians, but I can't guarantee that I can make that journey. But
I'll tell you, if we get a few beers in, the taxi might be quite expensive, but maybe after I see you, we can take a road trip up there.
Brilliant. It's been a pleasure, mate. I wish you all the best. Nice to see you.
Pleasure to meet you, man. Have a good one. Cheers.
Yeah, see you soon. Take care, mate.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you keep up to date with future episodes by subscribing to our channels. For more information on this podcast, or for all the latest music news, reviews, interviews and more, head over to our website www.therazorsedge.rocks.